Good morning. Welcome to the Fireside Chat. My name is Brian Kane. I'm the co-founder and publisher of BioProcess International. And along with Ann Montgomery, who's the editor-in-chief and co-founder of BioProcess as well, we are your co-moderators for today's session. The theme of this discussion is bringing it all together for commercialization, perspectives from every stage. For many years, the biopharmaceutical industry has approached product development, upstream, downstream manufacturing, and the supporting analytical methods as a series of separate and independent steps and processes. Many companies' infrastructures have been designed to mirror this approach, with each department responsible for only achieving that specific and individual goal. It's certainly an approach that still works, but like many things that do work, it may not remain to be the best way or the most efficient way to achieve a goal. So in today's competitive competitive environment, the dynamics of biopharmaceutical development are constantly changing and evolving. Technologies are changing, the science is changing, the management expectations are changing. So working in process silos doesn't make as much sense as it used to. And that's okay, because like in every industry, biopharmaceuticals must continually evolve and adapt in order to move forward. In Tuesday's keynote, Rohini from Amgen mentioned that the average cost to bring a drug to market today is about $2.6 billion. And the average time to bring a drug to market is now about 128 months. That's really too much money and too much time to sustain success. So in order to mature and grow as a business, the biopharmaceutical industry must find a way to reduce overall development cost and time to market. The key is not to look at upstream and downstream and analytical as independent processes, but to mirror the format that Barry Walsh created for this conference and look at each phase of development as a complete process. And like marriage and parenting and life, communication is the key to making all things work. All departments must be on the same page and agree to what the ultimate goal is and how to achieve it. This will ensure the latest science and technologies are being utilized and synchronized in an approach which should improve efficiency and efficacy and ultimately lower drug development costs and time to market. So that's really the goal of today's conversation. Barry's put together a terrific panel here that conservatively has over 100 years of combined experience. These folks represent every phase of biopharmaceutical development and have seen what has worked and what has not worked. We have the opportunity this morning to tap into this and take advantage of this group and rely upon their unique experiences and expertise to find out and figure out what they've done, how they've done it, how they've overcome challenges, and apply it to your processes and your businesses. And if we can do that, we can help ourselves, we can help our companies, and ultimately we can help the patients upon which are relying upon us to create the life-saving drugs and treatments. So this is an interactive discussion panel. We're going to focus on four main categories: technology application, platform development, reducing development time, cost, and reduction. We'll ask each panel member the same questions, and then we'll provide you, the audience, the opportunity to join in on the conversation. So before we get started, let me just do a brief introduction of our panelists here. Paul Wu is currently Director of Upstream Development, Bayer Global Biological Development Organization. Paul has over 20 years of experience and is responsible for cell line generation and cell culture process development. Ali Siapush, at the end of the table, is currently president and founder of PharmEffects, a biopharma consulting company. He has over 20 years of experience working with Dendreon and Amgen, where he was responsible for early and late-stage product development. He has helped Dendreon's automated manufacturing platform and provided technical support for the commercial manufacturing. Gunter Yashies, currently Senior Director of Strategic Customer Relations at GE Healthcare Life Sciences, has published countless articles and has published a number of books, including Process Chromatography Handbook in 2008 and the development of a therapeutic monoclonal antibody products in 2010. In addition, in 2012, Gunter was awarded the BioProcess International Award for Thought Leader of the Decade in Downstream Processing. And finally, Catherine Chalupka is currently a senior scientist at Amgen, and she is responsible for commercial development, process development, and characterization from phase 2 through commercial. So with that being said, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Ann Montgomery, and we're going to get the conversation and the questions started. Ann.
If we look at how approaches to platform development, perhaps process characterization, validation, among other things, are improving cycle times for clinical and commercial production. And we can also look at how they're reducing development timelines and cost. So these are a number of issues that you can speak to, perhaps. Paul, would you?
Yeah, again, I think the mindset in both industry and the regulatory agencies from these two parties that allows us to even learn from manufacturing process, from a commercial process is very it's wonderful to me, because we are allowed to learn from a commercial process like retrospective validation. That's something we do very often now. Yeah, I think that's science. We allow science to drive our understanding of development and commercial manufacturing.
I think these days, because we do have a lot of experience, maybe not so much with disposables and continuous manufacturing, but from stainless steel, which I agree is great, and I like stainless steel. I think we can take a lot of the information that we've learned from past characterization products, from lots of manufacturing data that we've accumulated, and we can apply that to what we're doing moving forward, so that maybe we don't have to test absolutely everything. And that can help to shorten, say, characterization durations, leverage development data, things like that. I also think that looking at general industry trends, things like that, leveraging information from our colleagues can also be applied very, very well to where we're no longer doing, say, full factorial experiments looking at 6 different parameters. It's just not the way we're going to be moving forward, especially with these new initiatives from FDA and other agencies. Breakthrough therapy pathway, if you have a year, that's a lot of time to get things to the market, and we're going to have to start to condense things and leverage the information that we already have and apply that to some of these newer projects.
You know, I'm currently working with preparing the Recovery of Biologics conference as a co-chair, and in that context you discuss a lot of current science, right? You get all these abstracts to be reviewed and so on. I can say that one aspect that hasn't been mentioned here at all is the modeling of processes and also products and their behavior or their characteristics in the process. And with that process modeling and mechanistic modeling, I think we can bridge quite a few of these problems and combine them with high throughput experimentation, generating data that will hopefully bring us to much shorter times in validating and characterizing processes and getting them through. So I think we need to, or I want to put in kind of a recognition for the academics who relentlessly work on this modeling side of things. Some companies have taken this up more and others less, but I think that there's a big part of the future when it comes to cutting things short, going through modeling and computing instead of experimental work, or alone at least.
Can you speak to at what stages you're seeing some of these improvements in time and cost, and what the potential savings may be moving forward?
Yeah, I think the context of this conversation is still about working together, right from beginning to the end. I think it's very true that we even work in research talking about developability. So all this does result in reduced time, for sure. Certainly avoiding show killers later. It's not easy to measure such things, but I just know the contrary will not work. And put it that way, that throwing things over the fence will certainly fail. So I think definitely the consciousness is there now to work together, that every day what you do in upstream is tested by analytics, and that's an improvement I see.
Yeah, I think it's an evolutionary process. You know, if you think about cancer drugs versus, for example, the autoimmune type of antibodies, on the autoimmune side of things, those drugs already today change the life of the patients completely, right? Whereas the cancer drugs are still, certainly the earlier ones, disease modifiers, and they prolong life, hopefully a long time, but not usually really solve the disease problem. So through developing new drugs all the time, coming up with new concepts, new mechanisms, the industry is learning, and at the same time processes are being developed. The next process, all those learnings go in there, and time is cut short. I think we just have to realize that this is not yet an industry that delivers perfect products in the terms of curing disease, really. We are on a learning curve, and every time we learn, we develop new technology, get slightly better and actually also faster. And so I'm an optimist by nature, so I say that this will fix itself. There's so many engaged and highly competent scientists involved that we will get there. But one emphasis, if I should point at one technology area that we really need to make another move, that is the analytical side. We really need to get better at looking into the process and understanding at any time what's happening there.
I think in terms of resources and benefits, it's not going to be so much of let's quantify a monetary amount. It's going to be more of let's see how many resources that we can free up, to Paul's point earlier. In which case we can either start working on more molecules or free up resources to, say, work on these new technologies, evaluate those, redistribute things appropriately. So as we more streamline a lot of what we're doing, decrease our number of studies, we'll be able to deploy differently. And I think that's really how we're going to wind up looking at the benefits and quantifying that, so that we can make advancements in certain areas while still maintaining our main business, which is getting drugs to the patients.
I want to go back to something I mentioned earlier, because to me, technology is only a part of the solution. And a lot of times what I see in helping you to get there faster or slowing your progress has to do with sort of people's and sort of the business side of things. And let me describe to you what I mean by that. Many years ago, I remember when our company, I started at Amgen when Amgen was a really small place, and you did everything by yourself, right? So many small companies are still that way, but larger companies grow into a structure, and everybody's got a job, and everybody does specific things. But I remember you would do basically everything. We would develop the process. We'd go into manufacturing. Sometimes you were even turning valves. We were PD guys, non-GMP. We still did it. And then as time progressed, roles became more defined, and you were just responsible for developing the process, and you gave it to the manufacturing folks. And it used to be that they would look at it and say, nah, I don't like it this way, and they would make changes, and then all hell would break loose. Stuff wouldn't work, right? And you would come back and say, all this stuff you gave me doesn't work. Well, what did you do? And they would describe it, and you would say, well, that's not the process, right? And then you would go back and forth trying to figure out who to blame and all of that kind of business. So as companies grew and matured, you had more well-defined structures, more well-defined roles and responsibilities to make it very clear, okay, this group is responsible for doing this. Here's what you're accountable for. Here's your deliverables. And that's what this group is responsible for doing, executing that stuff. But here's where you get sort of your playtime. I'm seeing examples of that. So as you know, biosimilars are starting to become pretty big. So a lot of companies are starting to get into the biosimilars arena now. Many of them are outside of the United States. So Indian companies are coming on the market, working hard on biosimilars. There's Chinese companies that are working on biosimilars, Korean companies that are working on biosimilars. And many of these newcomers, when we visit them, we see glimpses of how things were here many years ago, right? So I go into manufacturing and they're showing me stuff, and it isn't what I saw in process development, and we didn't like it and changed it. And I'm scratching my head thinking, wow, you guys are going to run into problems. So I'm certainly hopeful. If there's anyone in the audience today that is from, one of these countries that are starting to get into the biosimilars field, take heed and learn from what's already been learned in the United States, and don't repeat those same mistakes. It's human traits. People want to do that. People want to put their own stamp on things, but it will cost you more and it will take you longer if you try to recreate and relearn all of those things. The problem's already been solved. Don't go through the same path. If you want to go through quickly, learn from what's already happened.
Great moment to have the audience kind of get involved here a little bit. Great perspective. I completely agree. We talked about communication in the opening statement, and it's internal communication, but it's external communication. A lot of the things that companies are doing have been done before. They've done them well. They haven't done them well. There's a lot of information and certainly history out there in the marketplace that we need to tap into to not repeat the same mistakes that have already happened. But for the audience, are there any other perspectives or experiences, within this topic matter that you'd like to share? Okay.
I'd like to make another comment. The flip side of this, of course, is right. If you say don't repeat mistakes, learn from the people who have gone through this and made their experience grow over time. The flip side of this is that you don't really try the totally new approaches. There's a risk that you don't think out of the box when you do this, when you always follow the white-haired or no-hair kind of guys. And so, I think we need an element of both. And I can only repeat, I have an anecdote from ages ago. I will never forget this. I was walked through a corridor to a meeting room by the head of manufacturing in a German company, very traditional building, old corridors, wide. And he stopped all of a sudden, opened the door and showed me a lab and said, this is the lab where I redo all the processes that I get from PD. And he was really serious about that. So yeah, I think this is a very real observation. But new things don't happen without questioning the old ones. So it's really important that we also know that.
Thanks. So I have a comment and a question. I agree with you, Gunter. I'm very optimistic as well, too. But I guess my question is kind of looking at it from sort of the regulatory side as we introduce new technologies, new products, ways to manufacture. My question is this. I mean, there's a lot of the talks this week have been about, going faster and going, cheaper even, right? Driving down cost. Are we going to reach a point at which the complex gets reduced to a simplified scenario that we can't really go any further?
I don't know. I'm in general, almost philosophical. I'm not a great friend of this total cost focus. The reason that is that you are on a downward spiral of, making things, well, simpler maybe and less costly, but also much less flexible for anything that could happen, right? It's like the Toyota case. They're really good at doing one thing, but as soon as something happens, they're screwed, right? They have to call back hundreds of thousands of cars, and the same happened with other car manufacturers, not just Toyota. So, you still have to keep some flexibility in the system, and that costs money. So I think I would be very careful about a very blinded focus on just cost reduction. I also I think I can support that by saying that so far, and I say so far because I think the biosimilars development is going to change that, I haven't really seen that cost reductions, technology advancements in manufacturing, etc., have been handed on to the patients. I'm analyzing this regularly, and I see how the price developments are for drugs, and I know how much it costs to develop a new drug, so I'm not even against paying high prices. Don't get me wrong, but I think we need a more balanced approach between these two things, and a lot of foresight is also required, because in financial management systems, whether it's GE or whoever, the big corporations, they're all the same financial mechanisms, and they force people to think very short term. You report quarterly, you do all this stuff. I don't know, armies of people are just recruited and employed to report quarterly, right? How efficient is that? It's a much more general issue, I think. I don't know we can get out of that trap easily. We're making drugs, or you're making drugs for the better of the patients, but you're still working in a corporate environment, and there are constraints, and you just can't escape from them easily.
Can I comment? Yeah, I think our industry has a very good balance of commodity-like CMOs, and in our company, we often work on one-off technologies because of the product itself, and I'm very happy to do that. Otherwise, how would I justify my pay compared to the CMOs? So I do agree with you, Gunther, that we need to keep some kind of flexibility. But again, it has to come down to money
Sure.
to show the, because our company cannot find a CMO that would handle something that's other than antibody, simple antibody. Then that's how we justify our existence.
It frequently comes to money, but I think it also, especially in the drug industry, will also go towards quality. So if a lot of times we're looking at new technologies, and I think the time aspect is always going to be there. Everybody always wants things quicker. But also, if we can get new instrumentation that is likely going to be costly, but we can use that to build quality in as we go along, like going towards the analytics that we can get in line, that I think we will go towards to ensure that the quality is in there. And I've seen people say, yeah, it's going to cost money, but we will go forward with that because that'll build quality in. So I think we can go that direction as well.
Let me add a couple of words to supplement what I just heard, referring to CMOs and cost, quality, etc. So here's at least what I've seen with respect to maybe too much emphasis on costs. And I fully recognize there's probably a number of you in the audience who actually work at CMOs. So what I've seen is, as an industry, as a customer of CMOs, oftentimes as the customer, we have a little bit too much of a focus on cost. So we beat them up over price to get the price down low. And what tends to happen, it's pretty consequential, and it actually hurts us in the long run, because what tends to happen is it puts an incredible amount of pressure on the CMOs, and it causes all kinds of issues to happen at the CMOs. They have a hard time hanging on to their staff. They can't pay their staff as well as the industry. As a result, what happens? Your stars tend to fly the coop very frequently, and that causes discontinuity for your clients, which means you can't do as good of a job on the projects for the customers. So we kind of hurt ourselves by doing those things, and yet I've yet to see someone look at things and say, these people are a lot more expensive, but they've got better people. Let's go with them. More often than not, I look at sort of a pressure on cost, and these guys are much lower cost. Let's go there, unless I've heard nightmare stories, and then you try to avoid them, right? So in many ways, the emphasis on cost actually it's bad for industry, but it's still there.
We're getting to run out of time, so what I'd like to do is ask the panelists for some final comments on what the future looks like, what their visions are for the coming decade, perhaps, and then also give you a little bit of time if you have some other thoughts to add to that. So who wants to start?
Okay, again, I think collaboration is really the key. This is a buzzword, but I really believe humans working together has been the advancement of our human race. So I really think that's the key.
Yeah, I'd like to re-emphasize this is a great industry. We are doing fantastic things for the patients. As vendors, we help you guys making medicines. If you want the short message of what we're doing, like the things that you can tell your kids in the morning when you go to work, it's fantastic to see the progress that is being made. Maybe I would like to point you at a very interesting website where you can learn even more about this whole market and this whole situation. There is a report that is called The Global Burden of Disease. It dates back to 2013. It's regularly updated. When you Google that, you will come to a website where you can actually look at the disease profiles around the world. And there's, if you are interested in these things, there are really interesting facts to find. And they actually point at the future in the sense of, we may actually turn to some other problems as well. Not just the mAbs and cancer or whatever it is that we focus on. Problems in healthcare that are not solved yet. Some of them cannot even be solved by drugs, but others can, and they are not in focus. 2.2 billion people suffer from what is called a neglected tropical disease. And as long as that is the case, the areas where these diseases are frequent are in paralysis or whatever you call that. I mean, they basically will never develop before this goes away. So, just to turn your mind over to other areas where I think this industry could do a lot of good as well, not just the things that we are currently busy with.
I'm going to take more of a high level look at things. Moving forward, I think this is one of the most exciting fields to be in. We're focused now on mAbs and things like that. The modalities out there are many out there, and it's growing, and there are a lot of diseases out there that are probably going to warrant even more modalities that we can be working on. And we tend to get into, especially in the development world, into the minutia of how are we going to do this, and kind of get overwhelmed with it. But overall, we're doing great things for the patients. We're bringing great drugs to the market. And yes, we're always going to be pushed to go quicker, faster, cheaper, high quality, and all that good stuff. But I think this is a very exciting place to be.
I agree. I would say when I look forward, many of what my colleagues have said, I agree with. I see approaches coming into fruition now that we've just kind of talked about before, but they're actually happening. So I mentioned cell and gene therapy. If you are not familiar with cell and gene therapy, I would recommend maybe reading a little bit about it. There's incredible advances that are being made in treating diseases that are essentially untreatable right now, or are just manageable right now. And these advances are really making it look very promising that these products are going to come to market. So correcting the disease in the first place. Some of our clients are working on treatments for cancers where the only option for the patients is to essentially wait to die. And they are being helped. And I think it's incredibly exciting. And we're seeing problems solved that nobody could solve before using a different approach. I think it's a big field, and it's growing very, very fast. And I would encourage you to go and learn about it, because you will hear more about it over time.
Okay, we are at our time. I'd like to thank Paul, Gunter, Catherine, and Ali. Fantastic, great conversation, very vibrant and lively. I hope everybody got some information that they can use in their own processes. I'm sure the guys will be here for a few minutes afterwards if you'd like to say hello. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the show.